Okay, wonderful. Sibusiso, welcome to the People of Purpose talk show. I
Thank you.
have never met anybody who has summited Mount Everest once, let alone twice. And you've done the 7 summits in the 7 continents. That is amazing. Welcome, and I am completely honored to have you as my guest today. And so is my team. We are all looking forward to this wonderful conversation. And I also want to welcome the Facebook audience. Thank you for coming along and being a part of this. To hear about Sibusiso's journey and his amazing life and story from his humble beginnings to this great mountaineer, motivational speaker, and also he is a humanitarian and something of a businessman as well, an entrepreneur who is actually giving people an opportunity to climb mountains in South Africa. Am I right, Sibusiso? Is that what you're doing?
You're very correct. You're very correct.
Yes, that's it. Okay, great. So, welcome to everyone. And let's get started. Let's get started right now, Sibusiso. So, I always like to talk to my guests about their history. You know, it all begins with where you came from. And your journey was started when your mom and your dad had you at a mission called Shangwe in Mpumalanga. Would you like to take the story from there?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Michelle, and your team for having me. And I would like to thank everyone that has taken their time to watch it, to watch this chat. I'm very grateful. Yes, my journey starts in the Mpumalanga province where I live now, but it was at the age of 4 when my parents separated, which would then also compel my mother to take me and my sister over to the small kingdom of Eswatini or Swaziland then. So the reason for that was my mother was Swazi, and she thought, oh, well, it would be much more better for me to bring up 2 children in a much more relaxed country than a busy, bigger country like South Africa. So I come from that background, and my mother was a woman who was not educated. She couldn't read nor write, but she always valued education, which then informs the reason why she would channel all her energies as I was growing up to try and see me and my sister go to school or get to acquire some form of education, type of education. But things didn't really go quite well when she arrived at her home country and area, which was also very rural, which then forced her to leave me and my sister with my grandmother, and then she went to one of the smaller cities to try and fend for us. So there we were left with grandmother, and the first sort of 9 years of my life, from the age of 4 until 9, life was really very tough for me and my sister. I think we looked very poor. We had no clothes to wear. We would have no food to eat. We were not those kids or children who grow up with 3 meals a day. And it would only take my grandmother to go and work for other people throughout the day and then come in the afternoon where you'll be very hopeful as a child thinking grandma will bring something. But I want to say that there were some days where she came back home empty-handed, which means then you'll have a very stuffed stuffed stomach, and then and you'll be hungry throughout until she got something. We're walking barefooted, and then at the age of 6, people started coming into my life, or to my grandmother, asking if I could look after their goats. And then she was sort of forced to say yes, young as I was, but because they promised that they would give me a bit of a pay. I probably would like to claim that that was the first time I started working, and I've been working ever since then, since the age of 6, because I worked for a number of years heading goats and then later to heading cattle up until my mother came back at the age of 9, came back to check if my dad had showed up to to help us with education. When my grandmother said he had never showed up here, we never sent him, he had no interest at all, he'd never seen come to children, to see the children, my mother opted to remove us from grandmother and took us with her to the city of Mbabane. And in 1980, I was 10 years old. People can work out how old I am now. I was 10 years old, and my mother had met a wonderful man who became my stepdad, and then he gave me the opportunity to go to school. So that sort of gave me excitement and was towards helping my mother to achieve her vision of her children, to that they have some form of education. I think at that age, I had also valued education, even though I didn't really know much what an influence and impact it would have in my life. I just took it and make it work for me, and was one of those things I could claim today and say was one of the very valuable lessons I would learn in my life, that if you get given an opportunity, the only thing you can do for yourself is to make it work for you. But in most cases, we tend to say, oh, here's an opportunity. I'm just going to make the person who's given me the opportunity happy. I always say, no, you don't do that. They're already happy by giving you the opportunity. It is only for you to make it worth your while. And then you can only please them by being the best you can be. I sort of did that for my stepdad, and he was very proud of myself and my mother as well. So that sums up my childhood. It wasn't very glamorous. I was never an adventurer. I was just focused on doing duties which were in I was sent to do, looking after goats and then later to cattle, and that was that. So when I got to school, I get stuck in and worked hard, hoping that one day I would change my life for what I envisioned it to be by getting some form of education. So that gives one the background of where I come from.
Sibusiso, thank you for sharing that part of your history, which was difficult, yet it has catapulted you to where you are today, which is proof that our difficulties, which are setbacks generally, however, we can turn them into our victories, which is what you have done, because your time herding animals, perhaps that love for the animals, led you to your life as a game ranger. Would you like to share just that part for us? How you ended up as a game ranger, especially, please also share the part where you worked as a laborer. I would love for people to know that part of your life. Thank you.
Yeah. So straight from high school, because I went to as high as matric, and then the reason I never saw myself going to college or tertiary or anything was purely because when when I looked around, I could tell that my stepdad wasn't really going to be able to do it, to pay for my tertiary education. In fact, to make it clear to everyone, when I got to grade 9, I was about to drop out of school. And then I thought, well, this shouldn't happen. So I started really going around trying to help my stepdad. And I would work for a Canadian couple who then paid for the rest of my high school fees after hearing my story or my plight of almost falling out of school. Then they still valued education as well. And they said, well, we will help you, assist you with up until O level or matric, but we will not be able to continue because we'll have our own children to look after. So it was just looking around the difficulties that I had to go through to even get to matric, and thought, well, just appreciate that. And then,
So, can I ask you to just pick up your volume on your end? Just pick it up a little.
yes, okay. So yes, I thought, well, I think
Thank you.
take that part of the education I got and make it really work for me. So straight from high school, I needed to moonlight into a working environment. I had to look for a job. But most people will agree with me to say, where do you get a job when you just had a high school certificate? And it would be very difficult. But I never really gave up. So I started applying. I started walking around, looking from one company to another. And then one day I saw a construction company that was starting a big building project in the city of Mbabane. And then my instinct sort of prompted me to go and speak to the foreman, which is what I did. And there were many of us, a few of us that were waiting patiently when they started at 7 a.m. in the morning. And then he picked up 3 of us and gave us tools, and the tools were a pick and a shovel. And these were the tools that I was given, that I would probably earn a living or earn a salary, which would probably feed me and my family, my mother and my sister, and then later on being able to save a little bit of it to build a house for myself. But from the very first month, I realized that that wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to help me. It was hard graft, hard grind, long hours, but come payday, it was little. And then it sort of opened my mind to thinking beyond that, where I went, okay, you've got to change this. You can't just work like this for a long time, but keep trying. So it motivated me to keep trying, and I applied, wrote hundreds of letters, all of which came to say, well, sorry, we don't have any jobs, quite understandably, because I wasn't qualified. I had nothing, no paper to show that I'm skilled in this part of department or anything. I wasn't anywhere near there. But I never gave up. I kept trying. So one day, those olden days, I'll tell people every night, I like that. I tell people, it was my kids. Now, when I ask them, how are you applying for work? They tell me, oh, I send my CV. I'm like, what's that? How do you send a CV? We used to write a letter and two addresses, and then you know that. So you write, and then one day I realized I can't think of any company now that I can write to address. So I took an address book, one of those telephone books. In those
Yes.
olden, they used to have addresses for companies or for people or schools, whatever. If you wanted an address, you go to that address book, you look, and then you got everything. So I saw this address for this. As I was paging through, again, following my instinct, which has guided me for my life up until today, I looked at that particular address and then said, you apply to them. And it was a nature reserve in northern Swaziland outside Mbabane called Malolocha Nature Reserve. So I felt prompted to apply. I applied to it and I sent a letter away. Sending a letter away means go to your post office, buy a stamp, put it in, and then it goes. So you don't hear until about a week or two or three. And then I got a reply from Malolocha Nature Reserve, which wasn't really anywhere near giving me a job. It said, well, we don't have any opportunities at the moment. However, we have kept your application just something come up. And I thought, that was very close, because it was the only time I got that kind of a response. Anyway, I sort of put it away and carried on with research and checking on addresses and applying. And then I go to the post office, I receive a letter. It looked a replica of a letter I'd received before. And I thought, these people had replied to me. What are they saying now? And they were calling me for a job interview, which was my first job interview. I got interviewed in Malolocha Nature Reserve by the senior warden, the man who runs reserve. Now, going back to what you said about heading cattle and heading goats in the bush, it had helped me a lot in that manner, because when the questions which were conservation related came up, I could answer them. When I had to identify animals, I knew the animals, so it had served me, it put me in good position to pass that interview. At the end of it, obviously, the senior warden said to me, oh, Mr. Vilane, well done. Congratulations, you've got yourself a job as a game ranger. So I thank this man with all high spirits, but at the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, I wonder what rangers do, because I had no idea what rangers do anyway. But I was willing to take the risk. So I went back to the foreman after spending 2 years in the construction company, hard crafting, without an option. I didn't quit. I just worked and grinded up until I got the job at Malolocha. And I started in Malolocha in 1993. Worked until 2007, and it was 2006, yes. It was there that I really then, not to say I really started hiking or loving going on hikes, but I worked in the nature reserve, which was beautiful, and I would meet people who wanted to do walks, and I would explain to them what they would do and where they would do it. It was just fulfilling, but again, it wasn't really paying well. The game ranging job doesn't really pay well, but it was okay, which also just challenged me, and then I wanted to do something else. But it is now, because people will probably say, but when then do you start doing this mountain climbing thing? It was in Malolocha on a Saturday afternoon when I had just about finished work, because I started at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I handed over to my work colleague who had taken over from me, who then finished the day at 6 p.m. because that's how we worked. I'd seen this man walking in and signing in with me. We didn't talk much. He just went and did the walk. But on that Saturday afternoon, as he was walking back from that walk, I had not felt finish your day and then just rush down to the rangers camp. I just felt like just hang around and just chill. That's what I did. So when this man walks in, I felt interested to hear what he was going to say. Where he said to my work colleague, my friend, I did a walk. I've just done a walk in your beautiful place. It is stunning. It is very beautiful, but it is so vast, and I didn't feel comfortable walking alone. All I want to know is are there any groups of hikers that I can join on a weekend? And my work colleague very correctly said, I'm sorry, so people that come and walk here, they come and walk with their own groups of friends. So at that point, again, I would have probably said, you know what, we finished work, go home. I didn't. I paid more attention. The next question was, do you know any local guys like from the community or the homes around here who I can ask because on a weekend, because I would like to come and walk again. And then my chest just pounded saying, talk to him, just go talk to him and tell him you would be that fellow that will take him on the walks. I stood up and I went straight to him. I said, my name is Sibusiso. I'm one of the game rangers here and police officers. I know the trails and the reserve very well. I hear you would like to walk here. If you really are serious about it, I would be happy to take you walking when I am off duty. And then obviously he said, that would be very kind of you. And in fact, the reason I'm asking is because I don't have any friends in this country. I've just arrived here. He was less than a week old in the country, having worked in South Africa as a British Consul General, but in Swaziland he served as a British High Commissioner named John Dobo. And people would probably that have heard me, may heard me mention him many times ago. John sadly passed away last year. May his soul rest in peace. But he is the man behind this person talking to everyone here, particularly when we talk mountains. I met him in the nature reserve in Eswatini.
Wow, what an amazing story. And yes, may his soul rest in peace because he gave you that opportunity and he opened that door for you. Wonderful. It just goes to show that if you follow your purpose, it doesn't matter where you start and how you start, but if you just keep pressing on, you will reach that goal. Marvelous, Sibusiso. I think that is a beautiful story. So let's get into the technicality of your whole mountaineering life, that part of you. So the 7 summits and the 7 continents. Let's give people a geography lesson. So go ahead.
Yes. So that starts from when I walk away from Everest, because when I want to say to people that I understand how this started. When I decided to climb Everest, which was purely a challenge from John, because we had done this our second walk in Madalocha, and then John said to me, you know what, I've been watching you walk and climb and rock scramble. You do it with such ease and such agility that I think you show no fear. I feel comfortable following you leading me and guiding me. And then he said, it is a talent, but it begs the question why there are not that many climbers coming from Africa. It was very specific. Why there are no black people climbing mountains? So I said to him, well, I don't think we Africans have this sudden desire or urge to climb mountains. We don't have time for it. But secondly, I don't see the interest in us looking behind our backyard, seeing a mountain, and then wanting to go up a little ridge and then try and have a look of how your house would look from the top of that ridge. No, we don't see it that way. So he says to me, well, it's amazing because it is almost 40 years since Hillary and Tenzing climbed Everest in 1953. This is 1996. I don't remember or recall it having been attempted by an African. But I see you today, and I think there are many other young Africans who have the same ability as you are. So I thought, well, and again, I needed to make a comment. So I said to him, well, if we're talking about a mountain which is overseas, which obviously it was, I don't think it's because we cannot do it. I don't think we cannot climb mountains like Everest, but I think the biggest challenge is we cannot afford it. And at that stage, I had no idea that it would cost you close to R1 million to climb Everest only. And then when he mentioned to me how much it costs, I said, you see, I'm right. There's no ordinary African who can afford to pay that kind of money just to climb a mountain, because it really will not make sense why particular. So I started playing this tape in my head. I go to my mother who tries to bring food on the table every day, struggling. And I go to her mommy or maybe grandmother, because some of us are brought up by grandmothers. You so grandma, can I please have some money? I want to buy a ticket to go overseas. And then Gogo is excited about this. Oh, maybe my grandchild has got a scholarship or has got a job or something. He's asking for money to go to overseas. And then you tell them, because I want to climb a mountain. No, it won't really sit well, that talk. So I said to John, it's because we cannot afford it. But then John said something to me that is very profound. At that moment, he said to me, it is expensive, it is very costly, but people that do it, they get sponsorship. So he says at that moment, do you want to say that if you can have resources to climb Everest, you would do it? I didn't say to him, wait, I'm just going to go home and think about this. At that moment, I questioned myself, why would you do it? And the answer came within seconds. You want to do it for Africa. You want to show the world that Africa can reach great heights just like anybody. So I said to John, oh, absolutely. If I get a chance to climb Everest, I would do it. And when I said that, I had no idea how high Mount Everest was. I'd never read a book. I'd never seen a picture of Everest. But there's something that I believe made me to say that, because there's nothing else other than that that can make you say, yes, I can. It is having this conscious self-belief that you have what it takes with your natural ability to do it. So the self-belief was such that, well, why not? Bring it on, and then I do. So to take people now to the 7th summit. So I climbed Everest and I succeed. And I walk down that mountain telling myself, I will never go to any other mountain again. I will not climb Everest. I'll never climb any other mountain. I was done. I set off with a big goal and I achieved it. I'm going back to live my ordinary normal life, game ranger, family man, try and just make ends meet and ends work and provide for my family. And I was that. Anyway, how wrong I was, because 6 months later, all of that has changed. And then I started hearing about the 7 summits, which I didn't really feel excited about. I went and climbed Everest again for charity 2 years later. It was during the climbing of my second Everest that I started thinking beyond Everest, which was, what do you do next to try and inspire people in the generation of Africans who believe that it doesn't matter where they are, where they grow up, doesn't matter who their dads and mothers are, but believe that there are no limits. And I said, okay, I'm going to pursue the 7 summits. The 7 summits are, to people who don't have an idea, well, most people know now because they've heard about them. These are the continental mountains. In Africa, we have Kilimanjaro. In North America, we've got Mount McKinley, or in Alaska, called Denali. Then in Asia, we've got Everest. Then in South America, we've got a mountain in Argentina called Aconcagua. In Australia, or the Australasia continent, is 2 mountains. You either climb Kosciuszko in Australia, or you climb Carsten's Pyramid in Papua New Guinea. Europe's highest mountain is in the Caucasus Mountain in Russia, called Mount Everest. And then you've got, for the continent Antarctica, number 7 continent, mountain is called Vinson. So these are the continental peaks where you climb the highest of them all. So that started in 2005, and I climbed the last one of them all in mid-2008, and I got the 7 summits. I think when I did it, there were still less than 100 people that have done it when I did the 7 summits, but now we've inspired that adventure part of it. So many people have done it, followed suit, and have done that as well. But I was very proud to say, in the entire universe, in the world's population, or whatever it is, I was one of the very few hundreds or top hundreds people to do the 7 summit, and I did that. But it was just inspired by realizing that I did not just climb Everest for the sake of climbing it. It had to serve a purpose, and that purpose was to inspire Africans to believe in themselves and to believe that they can achieve great heights, regardless of where they come from. And that is what I still do. And I think I will continue to do so up until I can never walk again on a mountain.
Marvelous. And great heights, not just as a metaphor. Great heights, literally. Literally, that's amazing. I do love this aspect of your story, that your education, formal education, started when you were 10. And your intelligence was always there, but it needed to come through your formal teaching. So here you are, not just climbing mountains and this great mountaineer. You know the world, you know the geography, you know the countries, you have a personal relationship with all these parts of the world that you have traveled to. Fortunately, you managed to go to so many places. Do you realize there are people who have gone to preschool, grade school, high school, university, and probably done a few extra um, forms of learning like a PhD and a master's degree, but their geography stinks and you come across those people. So it's like, this is another way of doing life. And I think you are right now encouraging people on this platform and wherever else it may travel, that you can be anybody you want to be if you can dream it, which is basically your story. And you had that natural drive and intelligence to go in that direction.
Oh,
So
yes.
let's talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
traveling is very important. And
Mm-hmm.
you said that there are many people, particularly young people, who are not really driven to travel and to explore and
Mm-hmm.
make understand where they're living and what are some parts of the world that are there, because they're not interested in the geography of it, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
interested in the history of it. Yet that's why then most of them will feel that they are confined in this little space. And when there's no opportunity where they are, they think that's it, that's the end of the world. Yet the world is so vast and so
Yes.
much. You just need to open yourself up to it, and then
Yes.
you just go beyond where you come from. Go and explore, particularly if you're young. Just find other places on the planet. Know where you are in relation to the continents of the world. You
Yes.
should you should know your geographical position. Well, how
Absolutely.
they do that if they've never been to the Drakensberg, if they've never been to other parts of Africa? Uh, we've got a unique continent, very diverse in humans, very diverse in nature, very diverse in every aspect of it. We need to try and start here. But most of us just want to overseas. What do we want to do overseas? And then you come back here frustrated. No, you must start in your own continent and then know it, and you can just travel abroad. But what I'm trying to say is traveling opens up your mind and it makes you grow. That's why when I can never answer the question, when am I going to retire, when people ask me, because I say, why do I retire when I've seen so much? And I've reconciled with the fact that given the lifespan I have, I cannot be able to do all the things that are out there in the world. That's why I want to do as much, so that I can say, you know what, I was given a life and I did so much, because I know I couldn't do it all. So why do you stop? You must just keep going, because there's so much to do. There's so much to discover, and there's so much to learn about the world, about other people, but most importantly, about yourself. And that is what you do when you travel. There's a lot of self-discovery that comes around you traveling. And that is quite unique when you do that.
That's marvelous. That's marvelous. That's a beautiful outlook to have, especially with someone who has a vocation like yours, because then it's not vanity, because people want to do so many things, even summit mountains, and it becomes vanity. Yours has a beautiful human story attached to it, and I think that's why I am so interested. And perhaps many people out there are too. So let's talk about the North and the South Poles. You walked it. Tell us about that.
So again, trying to look beyond Everest and then what my next can be, which is also very critical. You always have to think about your next. In fact, I think one person put it nicely in this way. They say that the mountain you've just climbed, meaning the goal you've just achieved, is the base of your next one. So that's the start of your next one. So the question is what it is. So I when I was climbing Everest, I climbed in 2005. I was alongside Ronald Fiennes, who's well known as a polar explorer from the UK, and then a fellow South African explorer adventurer called Alex Harris. So Alex and I were sort of thinking about what was going to be our next after Everest 2005. I, I had done the 7 summits. I was about to complete the 7 summits. I've been twice on Mount Everest. Would I stay on mountain? So we wanted a bit of diversity, a bit of change. So Ronald Fine sold us the idea of doing one of the polar walks, and Alex and I decided we would do the South Pole together, but we wanted to do it differently, not your normal just do a last degree, which is what the today explorers do now. They don't do a full on. We wanted to do a full on, start from the coast of Antarctica, ski on walking on skis down to the South Pole, dragging sleds, unsupported and unassisted, meaning that from the day we got dropped off at the start, the 1100 kilometers lying ahead in front of us in this ice desert of monotonousness was just going to be the two of us. And we did that. And then we achieved this because we just wanted the expedition to succeed, particularly coming from two different backgrounds. I grew up in very rural South Africa in Eswatini, and Alex grew up in the city of Johannesburg. But we just came together with having been driven by this common goal to arrive at the South Pole. 65 days later, we arrived at the South Pole, and we were very delighted and grateful about it and thankful to each other having worked so hard. And when you do this kind of thing unsupported, it means you carry all your food with you, your clothing, which wasn't really much, and it was cold. So if you looked at our little sleds where we had our food or provisions, you would think that it was full of clothes, or there was the clothes, no, minimal, but what was there was sustenance, being food. And we got it right because we had to plan meticulously to work out every detail of what we will need day in, day out in food and in fuel, and then in time, and we pushed ourselves. It was tough. So when we finished the South Pole, Alex said, I'm sick of the cold, I'm sick of the tired, I don't want to go anywhere cold, I'm gonna go to a desert. So he went and tried a desert crossing, which I didn't really join him on. Then I wanted to do the North Pole because in today's world of exploration and modern exploration, there's something called the Explorers Grand Slam. If you check it, for those of you, it is there. It's people who have climbed Everest, they've summited, they've done all the 7 summits, they've done the South Pole and the North Pole. Very few people have done that. So I thought, you know what? Just for you to complete the Explorers Grand Slam and be in that list, you might as well go on and do the North Pole. And then it took a long time because I did the South Pole 2008. But then because of the lack of sponsorship and funding, and John wasn't, I'd said to him, I don't want you to be involved anymore because you've done so much for me. If it doesn't happen, if someone else is not interested in supporting this, then it's fine, so be it. But you know, the universe has got a way of playing out. I led a group up Kilimanjaro one day, and one person in the group said to me, Sibusiso, what is your next goal or thing you want to do? So I said, I've been trying to get sponsorship to finish the Explorers Grand Slam, and the one thing missing is the North Pole, and I haven't been very lucky to get the support, financial support I need for that. So he says, well, I'm not promising anything, but I'm going to try and see if I can speak to my company and see if we can support it. And then obviously they did. And then in 2012, I got the opportunity to go and finish the Explorers Grand Slam in the North Pole. But now to tell people about that, the South Pole is landmass, meaning you start from the coast of Antarctica, then you walk on solid ground, frozen for its entirety, and then you arrive at the South Pole, 90 degrees south, and then you find you're there. We get taken off or flown off in the ski planes back to your start, and then you travel home. Now, the North Pole, it is in the Arctic Ocean. This is this massive ice floating on the Arctic Ocean. So this person, this little bushveld boy who grew up in the Lowveld here, has walked on the Arctic Ocean, being reminded of the fact that this is an ocean. If you fall in, you're dropping into deeper, cold water. And I remember at one point I arrived to this little open lid. A lid is when the ice melts, and then it turns into water. We crossed one, and I sort of felt tempted because I had trekking or skiing poles. They're much longer, so I felt tempted to poke it down to sort of feel how deep it was. I never reached the bottom. So that gave me a fright of my life because of that. But every time you thought about the fact that here I am walking on this vastness of ice where it can just crumble and that can just disappear in a minute, but I'm not disappearing because the ice is holding on, is quite very humbling. But here's a moment I want to share finally on as I was about to exit the North Pole. We were getting closer to 90 degrees. And then somehow I'm looking around, I can just see the world just curving closer and closer and closer. And then it was just like a little round like this, which was only about a kilometer. So at first I didn't understand why was this. Then after about some time, I thought I need to tell someone this. So I tapped my one expedition partner from the American. And I said, Tom, do you see that the world is just ending over there, like a kilometer away from where we are? And he looked at me and smiled and he said, my friend, it's because you are almost on top of the world. You are on the globe. Like, so if you were looking at this big hole for the globe, you are at the top of it. And therefore, there's nothing else beyond that. Everything is going down. For me, that is profound to see that with your eyes and you're walking with your little feet on that ice. So yeah, it was an amazing experience and I'm glad I did it. So as I speak today, I'm one of the very few that have achieved the Explorers Grand Slam. And you know what? Sometimes I say it, sometimes I don't want to sort of talk about it because that's not really the reason I do those things. But all of those things have made me the first Black person in the world to do it. The Explorers Grand Slam, 7 summits, Mount Everest twice. That's quite remarkable. Walk to the South Pole, all of it. But again, it goes back to what you were saying and what I said. It doesn't matter how you started. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's a question of how high, how far and how high you want to go. And you can go as far as you think and believe you can. And nothing can stop you. I'm an advocate and the promoter of we human beings have got no limits except the ones we set for ourselves. You prefer to say, I know my limitations, I say it's okay, because it will be only that. But if you decide otherwise, you will never know how far you can go. You can lie to yourself, but you have got no limits.